Hello.
Hello?
I have been ill. Yeah, I got ill last week, maybe like last Thursday. I was hoping to do this video last week, but I was ill. It wasn't coronavirus. Thankfully, I tested negative.
Just so you know, I'm fully vaccinated.
My mum thinks it might have been RSV. Not sure what that is. I think it's like a cold or flu or something. But I'm feeling better now, so here I am with the review. I have a new crop of spots because I was stressed out. I was hoping to go to the Todmorden Book Festival on Saturday, but I couldn't go because I was ill. I'd booked to be part of a poetry workshop, so I was really looking forward to it. But I'm feeling better now, so it's okay. And I wanted to come in and talk about Clara and the Sun. So I've read this book twice. I read it first when it came out, and then I read it again maybe in August because I still hadn't done the review of it and I wanted to refresh myself. Normally that should let you know if I've liked a book or not because I only reread books I really like. Not that I would say this is a favourite book, but I definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was well done for the most part.
You can take that to the bank.
So I have this rare blue Indies edition of this book, which apparently now is worth a lot more money than I paid for it. I think since it made the Booker Prize long list, maybe.
I win! I win! You belong to me.
So this book is about Clara. Oh my god, Clara. And she is an artificial friend. She's a robot, and she's kind of like a care robot. So at the start of the book, it opens with her being in the shop for sale, and she's waiting to be purchased. So then she gets brought into a family, and the book is kind of more of like a family drama than an AI story that you would expect. So that is why I like this book. To be honest, artificial intelligence novels don't really interest me very much. And the only reason I was excited for this book is because it was written by Ishiguro. I just feel like this kind of novel in the hands of Ishiguro would be really interesting. That's just what I thought. And I was right. It's set in like dystopian America. I had one person I know say that they thought it was meant to be set in the 70s. But to me, it seemed quite contemporaneous, maybe like 10 years in the future kind of set, because the humans in it have like what they call an oblong, which is just a mobile phone basically. So I was like, it's definitely not 70s if there's mobile phones, is it? Oh, I have my tea in my Ursula the Sea Witch mug. I think loads of people will just roll their eyes when they think of a novel being narrated by a robot, like that kind of premise. But I think Ishiguro knows you're going to think that, so that's why he does the things he does. In some conversations he's had, publicity conversation kind of things, he's been talking about the narrator of a novel as a device. So he's definitely using the narrator in that way. One discussion he had with Jackie Kay the poet, he was talking about how you read something like Jane Eyre and you assume the narrator has a human voice and you attribute things to that, and he's kind of questioning whether we should trust the first person narrator totally. The idea of having a robot narrator, you assume that obviously that means the robot is not going to have a personality at all, but Clara kind of does have a personality because she's an artificial friend. She's been created to be like extra empathetic or something like that. So she's very like perceptive about what she sees to an extent. And she's very observant in regards to watching people. So it's quite a good read when you're reading it and you're thinking of this family drama. It is actually really interesting to get this from her perspective because in some ways she's kind of objectively watching everything. I think she does have some morality programmed into her, which is interesting. So yeah, Clara's brought in to this family. It's like a single mother with her like 13-year-old daughter called Josie, and Josie has like a chronic condition that's never really mentioned. It's never explained what the chronic condition is. In this dystopian American society, they like genetically engineer their children to be really smart, I guess. I think the intimation was that something went wrong with Josie's genetic engineering, so now she's got some kind of chronic health condition. When I was reading it, I was thinking it was something kind of like lupus or maybe sickle cell anemia, some kind of chronic condition that affects you in that sort of way. So Clara's brought in to help. Then some like more sinister things are revealed about why she's really there. I thought as a robot novel, it was kind of nuanced in a sense because AI is a trope, isn't it? Movies like Artificial Intelligence and like Wally and iRobot, it's always like, oh my god, the robot's going to take over. And I think Ishiguro knows you're expecting that. So this novel is kind of doing like the opposite of that, where the robots aren't trying to take over, they're just trying to help us, and whether it's possible for them to help us. A lot of AI narrative is that AIs are going to bring out the worst in humanity, but I think Ishiguro is also questioning whether it could bring out the best in us. Does he do that very successfully? Not too sure, but I do think it was doing some interesting things. Clara is a solar powered robot. So there's loads of light imagery, and I really like the light imagery because Clara doesn't see through human eyes. She keeps describing things in boxes, so you can imagine like seeing this, and it's all like in little boxes, almost like the way a fly sees, where there's loads of like different portals of light. I kind of imagine Clara to view things that way physically. And because she's a solar powered robot, you can understand why she pays so much attention to light. So I really enjoyed reading those bits. And sometimes she did have a bit of a quirky personality. Like there's one bit where she says that she's listening to the fridge because she enjoys the way it hums. So some things I just found a little bit humorous. There were also some elements that I liked because it was quite subtly gothic, I thought. So I enjoyed those parts too. There's one bit where Clara is walking across a field, and I was just picturing that a robot trying to walk over a field and just thinking it's so creepy. There's just a huge sense of anxiety in this novel because the dystopian world is a world on the edge where these kids they need to get into a good college or they're going to be screwed for life. And even the people that have big corporate jobs, but like the corporation could kind of fold anytime. It kind of seems like that kind of atmosphere. And Clara as a robot, there's also this anxiety that robots can be kind of threatening or go wrong. So every interaction she has with humans is teetering on the edge because if she does like one wrong thing, that could be interpreted that she's an offensive robot or she's transgressive or she is not right. I really enjoyed that sense of anxiety. I thought that was done quite well. What other gothic elements are there? So the actual like trope of an automaton is really gothic. One of my favorite short stories is called The Sandman by E.F. Hoffman. Let me see if I can find the book. Oh. Not E.F. Hoffman, E.T.A. Hoffman. But yeah, one of my favorite stories by him is The Sandman. And I think he also would write ballets and things. So there's also a ballet where is it a robot or something like that? But in The Sandman, there's a part where a character creates a robot. The robot is built by a university professor to trick people into falling in love with her. And I think that story was written in the 19th century. So for hundreds of years now, it's been a trope. So I felt like the book was doing some really subtly gothic things, which I enjoyed because I love gothic stuff. Another thing that intrigued me to read this book was because it was being compared to Never Let Me Go, which is one of my favourite novels. And I can understand the comparisons, but really it isn't really comparable to Never Let Me Go. But I still really enjoyed this book. Yeah, because Clara's a robot, her perspective is like very, very limited. One of the main faults that I thought in this novel was that even though it's this age of artificial intelligence, there's no internet. So I was like, what is the point of really having a robot? Because it's programmed to do things. But if you're going to get a robot in to kind of help care for your sick child, wouldn't you want that robot to be able to update itself on the latest like medical knowledge? But because there's no internet, Clara has like no specialized skills in care. So I didn't really think it was that likely. But the kids have their phones though in it. There's one part where the girls also like video calling. So wouldn't you need the internet to do that? But it was never explained. But Clara definitely couldn't connect to the internet. So I was like, is she really that much of an AI then? Because, you know, even Alexa, in some senses, is more of an AI than Clara is. There are tropes you expect with AI stories, and I think Ishiguro was sometimes played into those tropes, and sometimes he was trying to avoid those. There's one part where you find out more about why Clara was brought into the family, and it's like really sinister. Oh, I don't really want to spoil too much. But it's kind of the idea that is quite overdone, which is that robots should resemble humans. And that always really annoys me because I'm like, that is why everybody hates robots and hates the idea of AI, because people see it as like a fake human. And I was like, if it's artificial intelligence, it's not human intelligence, is it? It's like a technological intelligence. R2D2 is AI, Wally is AI. I was like, why can't they just make robots like that? Because they're really friendly, fun robots. Why do they have to make them where they look human? Because when humans see something that looks human but they know isn't, obviously humans are gonna hate it because it looks really fake and really threatening and creepy. Why do they have to make robots look like us? Like, what is the point in doing that? Because you know it's not a human. Why can't you make the robots look cute and fun? Yeah. Anyway, because Clara is a robot, her perspective is really limited. Because she can't connect to the internet, she kind of doesn't understand just normal facts. Because she's solar powered, she kind of sees the sun in an almost, I don't know, religious light. So it's almost like the sun is God. And sometimes she will connect things to the sun that it's not really logical to connect that to the sun at all. And I was like, that kind of defeats the object of having a robot, isn't it? If it's not going to know like basic knowledge. Like sometimes Josie's ill, so Clara's going to be like, oh my god, maybe I didn't do something. Maybe I didn't worship the sun enough, and that's why she's ill. And I was like, obviously, you're a really shit robot if that's what you think. But that also heightens the sense of anxiety in the novel that Clara could be found out as being quite a shallow object. Yeah, that's a little bit of what disappointed me with it. But also, the great thing about rereading it was, on the second read, I knew the plot, so I knew where it was going. I found it much easier to tell whether the pacing was good or not because I already knew what was going to happen. And when I reread books, I can tell I love them because I enjoy them just as much knowing what's going to happen and seeing how the novel builds up to that. So I do think that Ishiguro paced the novel pretty well. My favourite parts were when she was in the shop at the start because it was just so interesting seeing these robots in the window waiting to be picked. I just thought that was brilliant. The whole climax of the novel leads to this point where Clara believes she has to sacrifice herself for Josie's better health. I wondered how far Ishiguro was going to push it. So I was kind of hoping that her idea of sacrificing herself was going to end up being some kind of weird sex robot scene, but that never happened. It kind of built up to being something really boring, so that disappointed me. But even though I knew what was going to happen the second time round, I still enjoyed the run up to it. It builds up to the scene where she sacrifices herself, but then the scene where the actual thing happens, it doesn't actually describe the scene. It's leading up to it, and then it's a little bit of a time jump to like a few hours later where the sacrifice has been done. So you don't actually see the actual room where that happens in or anything like that. That was probably the weakest part for me. But generally, I liked it. I thought Ishiguro did a really good job of writing from a robot's perspective. Another thing Ishiguro said was that he enjoys writing little allusions to his previous works. The idea of like sacrifice, that's in Never Let Me Go, and the whole dystopian thing is in Never Let Me Go. And the first person stuff, he always writes in first person, I think. And then in Remains of the Day, it's a butler, so it's a servant, and Clara's a servant as well. So I enjoyed those little allusions, but I haven't read some of his other things, like The Artist of the Floating World. First of all, what a brilliant title. But I've not read that novel. So if you read it, is that good? What's it about? Tell me. And what's the other one? The Bone Giants or something? Is that the Buried Giant? Not read that either. Not sure if that really interests me. But I wonder if there are allusions to those books as well. One other thing that I kind of questioned was the ending of this book. So in the ending of this book, Clara is kind of let out to grass, and she kind of just waits in the store cupboard or something while she kind of winds down and her power depletes. So she's just like watching the fields or something, and it's like, oh my god, isn't this amazing for her that she can just watch the fields like she wants to and just stand there and not do anything. But I questioned that.
Do you really expect me to believe that? I won't put up with it.
No.
Because I was like, couldn't she have just been programmed to believe that whatever her dream of how she pictures her life to be at the end, couldn't she have been programmed to think she was in a really comfortable place when really she could have just been lying in like a dump? When she was saying that she was stood on top of a box watching the fields, I was just like wryly imagining to myself that no, Clara, really, you're in a dumpster being like gnawed by rats, and you're not aware of it because you've been programmed to believe that at the end of your life, maybe to stop the robots going crazy. If you've read the book, did you come up with any of your own little beliefs about the dystopian world or Clara?
Tell me everything. Every teensy-weensy, intimate, disgusting detail.
And were you disappointed that there wasn't any sex robot stuff? Another AI book I read was Frankenstein by Jeanette Winterson, which is... where is it on my shelf? Oh, it's there. And I thought this was a much better novel than Frankenstein.
Doubt hurts more than the truth.
But Frankenstein is like an out-and-out AI novel. Like, in Frankenstein, there's loads of info dumping about what AI technology is and things. If you're interested in AI stuff, you would probably like those parts of this book. But generally, I thought this was much better written. Yeah, when I read this, I was like, why didn't Jeanette Winterson just write a non-fiction book about AI? Because there was loads of info dumping. But now she has actually written a non-fiction book about AI. 12 Bytes, I think that's called. So, yeah, if you've read both, which one did you think was better? For me, this one was much better. I am glad it made the Booker Prize list, but I am also glad it didn't make the shortlist because it feels like a long lister. You know, it feels like one of the ones where it's doing some really good literary tricks, but it's not amazing. If the judges shortlisted this book, I would have been so annoyed, the Booker judges. Mirror in the Light by Mantell last year, that didn't make the shortlist, and that's a phenomenal novel. So, basically, by shortlisting the book, you're saying it's better than the long-listed books, aren't you? So, I am glad it didn't make the shortlist, but I did think it deserved to be on the long list. And that actually brings me round to my Booker videos. So last year, I really enjoyed following the 2020 Booker lists. But this year, I haven't had the time to do the Booker 2021 ones. I'm not going to do any shortlist videos or predictions or anything. But next year, I want to really do those. But yeah, I mean, this was on the Booker. So I've kind of done one Booker video. So you'll have to make do. Generally, I would recommend Clara and the Sun, but I would recommend you read Never Let Me Go first if you've not read any of this stuff, because Never Let Me Go is such a good novel. At the moment, I am about to finish Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I'm looking forward to finishing it and getting on to doing my Victober reading. So my next video is going to be my Victober TBR, and I'll be telling you what books I'm going to be reading for that. Alright, stay tuned. Bye.